Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is City of Villains on the Rebirth server. We are with our Mastermind Nightmare Lass, who is level 46. 23 million XP earned, almost 3 million to go to get to level 47, and our next superpower, which will be our second to last, and almost 90 million infamy because I sold a couple of archetype origin enhancers. And the reason I had them is because they gave out some extra veteran rewards, and I got enough reward merits that I've now added a third Doctored Wounds, which increases our smashing and lethal resistance, a little bit of mez, and fire resistance, improves all our healing by another 4%. So when you add up these three, our heals are 12% more effective, and that's pretty good. The next one I want a 6 slot and put a set of invention enhancements in is probably Painbringer. I also want to get inventions eventually in Dark Embrace. We might want to we need 2 slots here. We might want to actually, believe it or not, put a 6 slot in teleportation so we can go ahead and put an invention set in there at some point. My guess is before we're able to do all of that, because we have to do it with reward merits, this character will already be level 50 and ready to retire. But we'll see how it goes. I think we're still on triple XP. I'm not sure. They did something with the servers that forced a revalidation of the client, so that might mean that they're done with the triple XP. Not sure. We'll find out as we go. We were getting about 3,000 or 4,000 XP per minion, so if we start seeing that we're only getting like 1,500 or whatever, we'll know that the bonus XP is gone. But we are getting some extra from patrol XP, which is shown up here in the blue. Right when it's blank, there's no patrol XP. So we're going to getting a little buff, but that's only about 10%. Alright, so let's go ahead and continue our story arc with Terrence Dobbs. We are exterminating for him. He claims to be a great exterminator, but he's actually using us to do it. And he's learned that the Cray are messing around with arachnoids and possibly going to use them against arachnos. So he says, I really don't like the fact that the Cray are messing around with arachnoids. Sure, they're coming up with heavy-duty pesticides to control them, but they're also doing other types of experiments. Now, the last thing we need is Cray letting loose a bunch of super-duper arachnoids with extra cheese onto the world, if you know what I mean. Let's find out what the Cray are up to. So they're in St. Marshall, and I just happen to be in St. Marshall because that's where I ended up the last mission. So let's head over. And unfortunately, this guy's storyline seems to be capped at 45, so even though we're on +1, all that does is bring it up to 46, which is +0 to us, because it's +1 to the mission. I'm hopeful that maybe that's not true, but it seems like this guy's stuff is capped at 45. So we want to get done with his stuff as quickly as possible so we can get back to the +1 missions. As you can see from our buffs, we still don't have much fire or energy resistance, but we do have some nice toxic resistance now and excellent smashing and lethal resistance. So we're doing okay on that. Our recharge time bonus is now nearly 30%. And as I said, our healing bonus is 12%, so we're getting some really nice healing going with our AoE heals. And all of our healing powers recharge super fast, and that, by the way, if we look, the new power, the Suppressed Pain that I just enhanced, it's not a new power, but it's newly enhanced. It now, if you look up at the top, the first buff debuff regeneration rate was originally 200%, it's now almost 400%. So all of our minions will recover their health, just sort of passively, as long as I'm flying near them, quicker than they did before, twice as fast as they did before. So that's quite good. As I said in a previous episode, one of my very experienced with Mastermind former supergroup mates, I'm still in their Discord, and they're not really an active supergroup on the server anymore, but they're a guild of friends now, and they're really nice people, so that's why I'm still active on their server. The Daybreak Initiative, they're super awesome. And they still do some stuff on City of Heroes because a few of them still play, and one of them, who is like the co-chair of the group, is really good at Masterminds, and she said she doesn't even summon the little ones after a certain level because they die too fast, and she just can't be bothered to keep them alive, and you don't really need them. And it looks like we are, in fact, on +0, so... we're on +1, but the server will treat it as +0. And we're still getting 3,400 XP for a white con, which I think is pretty much still triple XP. Alright, so there's an elevator here. We're looking for research files. My guess is because there's an elevator, there will not be research files on this level, but we should look and see what's around. So there's nothing down this hallway. Anyway, yeah, she doesn't summon the little guys because she feels like they're not worth it. But I like the little guys, and I think they add a lot of damage. And for a lack of a better, this is a term that I never used to use, but I've seen it used a lot by a couple of the videos that I've been watching, and I've started using it now. But soak, right? They soak up some attacks so that those attacks don't all go straight onto Curly, Mo, and Larry. Right? Doesn't all hit our Three Stooges. Some of them hit Meanie, Eenie, and Miney, and it might kill Eenie, Meenie, and Miney, but they can get resummoned really quickly, and they'll take some hits for our bigger guys, the ones who we do not want to be killed, right? Like Curly. Now, obviously, we don't have to worry about this here, where they're the same level as we are. But if we're fighting orange cons and red lieutenants, we're fighting a purple elite boss. We definitely need some soak. I do think her advice is right, though. She said if you're in the middle of a fight, there's no point to resummoning the little guys if they die, and I think she's probably right about that. I've done that before just because I'm trying to be, like, I think like a healer as a mastermind, because I'm mostly designed to heal the pets. And so, when you're playing a game like this and you're being the healer, your instinct, your knee jerk is nobody should die on my watch, right? I should keep everybody healed up. And I just feel that way even when I see my silly little weak minion hit points going down into the red. I just feel like, no, I should save them, because it's just the natural reaction you get when you're being a healer in these types of games. Oh, so here's an interesting one, and I think this can be a little moment of perhaps some sage advice from somebody who has been on the internet since mid 90s, I guess. 96, I think I got my first modem and started playing mushes and stuff in 96, fairly early on, using dial-up. And mushes had bulletin boards eventually, by 97 or 98, and actually the first mush I was on, which was the Battlestar mush, or Battlestar Galactica, they had a mailing list that was the progenitors to forums, right? And everybody was on the mailing list, and I was on. They had several different mailing lists, and I was on them. And I saw a lot of the types of flaming and arguments and so on that happen on forums happen on the mailing list. Now, of course, it was moderated, and the head admins of the mush would stop people from doing too much flaming. But I've seen people get into it on these internet services, and I've gotten into it on these internet sites, forums, and stuff. And so, just a little bit of sage advice. Over the years, I've managed to not get into flame wars as much over the years, in recent years, as I used to in the past. I used to get into them all the time and get into huge debates with people. And it's generally not worth it, and you're generally not going to win the argument, because it's the internet and people don't admit that they're wrong, even in real life, and especially not on the internet. And it's okay to have a debate, and there are some people on these forums that are fun to debate with, because they might disagree with you, but they will be fair and polite about how they're going about it. I'm one of those, right? I will often admit I was wrong. In fact, I think it was on the D&D Beyond forum, and we have another elevator here, so my guess is this is probably where the research will be, but we'll go ahead and explore this level. Because it might be here too, or there might be more than one thing to find. I don't really know. It doesn't look like it. It looks like it's just one set of files, but we'll just see. Okay, is this the big room with the little... Yeah, this is the big room. Okay, so I don't like this room, but we've aggroed, so we're going to have to fight these guys. So anyway, I actually, on the D&D Beyond forum, I can't remember what it was, or I had misinterpreted some rule, or I can't remember the whole story, and oops, I clicked the wrong guy. I'm trying to get this guy free from the ice, and by the time I figured it out, he's free. I don't think we need to go into this room, because this room is just, generally, it's just extra things to kill. So we're going to keep going. If it was just a regular section of the base, I would go through it, but since it's the part of the base, like the prisons, that almost never has anything of use in it, we're just going to ignore it. We'll go back if we have to. Anyway, whatever we were arguing about, I admitted I was wrong. And I said, you're right. I'm going to have to revise my opinion or something like that. And somebody wrote, and the person I was discussing it with wrote back and said, wow, someone admitted they were wrong on the internet. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. And I was like, well, you pointed me to the section of rules that shows I'm wrong, and therefore I'm clearly wrong. And so, yeah, you're right. And but you don't see that a lot on the internet. And frankly, to be perfectly fair, I don't do it a lot on the internet either. Nobody likes to admit they're wrong. Um, but you can get into these flame wars and these debates, and this just happened today. There was one guy who's can't remember his name, but he's a really nice, infrequent poster on D&D Beyond. But every once in a while, he'll come in, and often comes into debates that I've been arguing with people for a while, and there's usually one or two people who just aren't listening, and I should know better. And he comes on and he'll kind of like join me and agree with me, and then he starts arguing with them, and at that point, I've stopped, but then he starts, and I've sent him a message today and said, yeah, it's probably not worth it. And there's this one guy in particular that I don't argue with anymore because I've recognized that it's useless, and I've actually recognized that it's so useless that I've got him on my ignore. I don't even see his posts. But the other guy, he argues with me, and I don't respond to him, and he hasn't figured out yet that I don't see his posts. The only reason I know he argues with me is because sometimes people quote him, and I'll see the quote. I'll see what he said in the quote, right? Because I see their post. And there's another. Yeah, see, there's more than one glowy. Okay, so we'll go to the next section. And so anyway, I got into a private message conversation with the guy who was kind of on my side, and he actually had made a post to this other guy and said, you're exhausting, or something along those lines. You're just such an exhausting forum member, because what happens is you'll write a big long 3-paragraph explanation, and you have one sentence in the middle of that 3 paragraphs that might be incorrect, and all the rest of it is right, and he'll pick on that one incorrect thing that's only tangentially related to what you're saying and pick on that and make that the argument. And it's like, no, that's not what I was talking about. I was talking about something completely different. Okay, this is the wrong example of that kind of a spell in D&D, but that doesn't change the point I'm making about how these sorts of spells affect combat. But he like purposely tries to get you off track. I'm not sure why he does it, other than just to be weird, or maybe he doesn't. Maybe he just wants to embarrass people, and so he tries to find any flaw in their argument. I don't know. But when I realized he was doing this, right, I started typing responses to him, and I argued with him a few times. When I realized he was doing this, I was like, no, I'm not going to argue with this guy, because he's not arguing in good faith, right? He's nitpicking on one sentence out of a 3-paragraph discussion and ignoring the main point and all the supporting evidence I have, except for the one sentence I wrote that maybe doesn't support everything as well. And so I was just like, I'm not arguing with him anymore. So I put him on ignore, and so I advised the other guy too as well. So here's my advice to you. If you have somebody that's arguing with you on a forum, and you get into this big argument with them, and they're not listening, and you find yourself constantly having to re-explain what you're saying to this one guy who insists on misinterpreting what you're saying, just put the guy on your ignore list. Don't argue with him. You cannot win with somebody like that, and all it's going to do is not only frustrate you, but you could get into trouble for either A, derailing the thread with your arguments, or B, getting into a flame war or something. I've never, ever, ever been disciplined on the D&D Beyond forums, and a lot of the really good posters, some of them who I've become very good friends with, have been. They've been flagged, they've been disciplined. One of them even got suspended for 3 days for responding to this same guy, who had just been so vicious and nasty and rude to him, and so he responded in an even more nasty but appropriate, because of how he was being rudely talked to. And the moderator, who's wildly unfair, nailed the guy I'm friends with and ignored all of the provocation that for multiple posts apparently on this guy that I ignore that had been posting, right? And so this guy had put up provocation after provocation after provocation, and the one I'm friends with had finally snapped and just let him have it in a beautiful, gorgeous tirade, so well written, just nailed the guy. And the moderator came in, deleted that post, and suspended the account of the guy who was defending himself from the provocation. I always think about my mom, who used to say when my sister and I would fight, and one of us would provoke the other one into a response, we'd both get into trouble. And when the like if I was the one who had provoked my sister, so well, she's the one who threw stuff at me, and my mother would say, but you're the instigator. And my mother actually considered it worse to be the instigator than to be the one who was provoked, because you're trying to provoke them to get them into trouble. And I think that's to some degree what this guy is doing. He's trying to provoke people into a response so that they'll get into trouble and get banned. Now, why he's doing that, I don't know. But that's why when I saw what he was doing, I was like, no, this guy's on my ignore. And so I have, I don't know, it's 2 pages long of an ignore list. I don't see these people. And it gives me peace. On the forum, I only see posts of people who are either neutral or polite. And I don't get to, and if anybody's doing this kind of garbage, they just go on my ignore list and I just don't respond to them. So that's my advice, Scrapperlock's advice to you, if you're using web forums or anything like that, don't engage. An old friend of mine on a mush once said, the thing about that you cannot win arguing with an idiot. They will just bring you down to their level and then beat you with experience. And that's exactly what this guy seems like. So I'm like, no, I'm not going to argue with him. So anyway, that's my advice. Don't argue with idiots. They'll just bring you down to their level and then beat you with experience. Just to put them on your ignore list, don't respond to them. Right? I know it feels bad. It feels like you're losing the argument. It feels like you're letting them have the last word. Let them have the last word. Anybody with any reading comprehension and logical ability to think will read all of the posts and realize this guy is not worth responding to, and you took the high road. And anyone who's too foolish to realize that, you don't need to try to win over their opinion anyway or care what they think. All right, that's my advice for the evening. Let's talk to Terrence, who says, "Ah, geez, this is bad, real bad. Arachnoid shock troops. This can get out of hand real quick." So it looks like the Cray files are saying they're making the arachnoids into shock troops. I didn't read that other clue, but that seems like all it is. So, okay, Nightmare Last, we're getting way over our heads here. Getting in the way of Cray secret projects can get us killed. We got to talk to Big Brother about this. And when I say that, I mean Arachnos. I've been told to talk to Arbiter Deus. So we need to report to Arbiter Deus and tell him what's going on. And it's about time, because the Cray are pulling some shenanigans on the Arachnos Islands against the Arachnos, and you wouldn't think that they'd be allowed to do that. I mean, I know Lord Recluse is all about like survival of the fittest, but I can't imagine he would allow the Cray organization to undermine him. So let's pause here, and I'll bring you back when we're with the Arbiter, and we'll see what he says. All right, folks, we're back. We're with Big D, and he says, Cray is performing experiments on arachnoids, and you have proof of this. Very interesting. Please inform Mr. Dobbs that this information is very useful to Arachnos, and we appreciate him bringing this to light. I'll begin preparations to counter this little Cray problem. I suggest you return to Mr. Dobbs and await further instructions. Thank you for your assistance. So now we will call up Dobbs, and he says, Arachnos is getting ready to act against Cray. Oh man, I don't want to get caught in the middle of this. How much you want to bet we're going to get caught in the middle? Just got a call from Arbiter Deus. He says he wants you to lead the counter-strike. So yep, we're caught in the middle. Head over to the Cray facility and take out the leader of the Arachnoid project. Now this is going to probably be an elite boss. We don't need to change the mission level because everything's been +0 or +1 to us, which is exactly what we want. We won't get any more than a +1 elite boss, and it'll probably be +0, let's hope. +1 we could handle. +2 is usually too much. We did get another team inspiration from all of the veteran rewards. We got a team plus health plus endurance, and I think we also, yeah, we have team plus damage, and then we also have team plus resist effects, right? Team plus mes defense. So we have mes defense, damage, and health endurance if we need it. I doubt we'll need it. I hope we don't need it. But if we die the first time, I will get the team inspirations ready to go for the second time. All right. These minions are pretty awesome, I have to say. I mean, I do miss being a scrapper or a brute or someone like that and just diving in and beating the crap out of things myself. But it is super cool to see all the minion special effects and to be an evil mastermind. It definitely feels villainous, right? And I've said this way from the beginning, you know, when we only had 2 minions. To like be the person that's just sitting there sending your minions into harm's way and you hover back there and just evilly laugh. Attack my minions, and they just obey you and run into the fray and sacrifice themselves for you because you are their mastermind. It's very cool. I mean, they definitely got the mastermind archetype to be a mastermind. There is no question but that it feels that way. It's very well done. It'll never be my favorite, right? My favorite will always be Scrapper. And my second favorites will probably be a tie between Brute and Stalker. Those will always be my favorites because I just like that style of play, that more aggressive, do-it-yourself, beat the crap out of enemies you have no business fighting type style. But there also is something extremely fun about just saying, go kill, and letting your minions do the dirty work for you. Which is exactly what mastermind bad guys do. Right? Like, heads of organized crime families and stuff, that's what they do. They let their minions do all the dirty work. And they sit back and smoke cigars and drink alcohol and put their feet up and read the newspaper, and their minions are out there doing all the nasty. And what is that? That looks like an Arachnos who's potentially going to help us. So let's see what we have to do. 5 stasis tubes to destroy the research, and defeat Cooper and his guards. So we don't actually have to save these Arachnos people, but we can. And we don't need their help, but that's fine. If they want to stay with us, they can. I don't really care. So now we're in +1 spawn with a +1 lieutenant, and this is more like the level of challenge I would prefer to have. A bunch of yellow cons. It's just unfortunate that this story arc just doesn't go above level 45. And so it maxes out at +1 to 45. There we go. Yeah, so that was good, right? Because we had a double spawn there, because we had the spawn of the kidnappers along with the regular spawn that would have been there without the kidnappers, and so we actually had to fight 5 guys, one of whom was a lieutenant, and that was about right, I think, for the kind of difficulty I would like to see on a regular basis in these missions. It's just that the game doesn't provide that when you're not on +1s, and we're kind of on +0 right now. So and it is hard, you know. I'll say this even like as a DM working on encounters. Are we being ambushed? Yeah. With white cons, yeah, you guys got to be kidding me. You have no chance. It's not even a real ambush. You guys have no chance. I will say, as a DM, right, making my own encounters up and trying to make them challenging but not overwhelming. It isn't easy to balance these things, even when you know a specific party. And of course, these guys had to balance this game for multiple group sizes, balance this game for we have an ambush coming. Balance this game for different archetypes, balance this game for, you know, solo versus group play and things like that. And so that of course makes it difficult, right? It's hard to balance things like that. It's hard to balance the battles in such a way that they will work in almost any circumstance, given that the variability of what could come through a mission. They did a pretty good job. They definitely erred on the side of making it a little too easy, which is why you've got to bump the mission difficulty a lot of the time. And they also made it a little too swingy, right? So that you could have it be a cakewalk all the way through the battle until you fight the elite boss at the end, and then you get your butt kicked. And so you're swinging too much from one end of the bell curve where it's like super easy and you're falling asleep, to the other end where no matter how hard you fight, you can't win. It really shouldn't be that swingy. And that is one of the weaknesses, one of the issues. But overall, is there a boss in here? There's Cooper, but he's just a regular boss, which is kind of disappointing. So we'll go ahead and buff up, though. So there is a little bit too much swinginess. It's too swingy, and there are elements that are too easy and too hard. But overall, I think they did it, as well as could be reasonably expected on balancing missions so that you could do them with any number of people, any archetype combination, at pretty much any level, right, within the level range of the story arcs, right? Whether you're 40 to 45 is the level range of this story arc, and theoretically they made it so that whether you were 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, you can do it, right? So given all of the variability inherent in these sorts of games, City of Heroes made a pretty robust set of design choices that made it so that, missions are pretty doable as a general rule. And, maybe a little too easy at the upper levels, but, again, given what they had to balance, they actually did a pretty good job. It's not perfect, and I know sometimes I grouse about those imperfections, but given how hard it is to do that kind of balancing at all, I think they had a lot to be proud of with the way they designed the balance of this game. Yeah, it's certainly not easy if you're, say, a Dungeons and Dragons DM and you've got a level 5 party and you're trying to run them through a level 1 adventure. They're going to be overpowered, and it's not easy to scale it. It actually takes quite a bit of work, and it's certainly nowhere as near as scalable as this game is, right? And it's also not easy to take an adventure that's designed for 4 characters and run 8 through it, or 1. In fact, there are whole third-party systems designed for that, right? The what I've been talking about, solo playing, right? Two of the supplements I have, DM Yourself and the Solo D&D Companion, or whatever it's called, are both multi-page. I mean, you're talking about 50-page books or longer with detailed instructions on how to play one character in an adventure made for 4 or 5. And what's going on here? Why are you getting hurt? Oh, one of my idiot minions is trying to solo somebody. Okay, we'll help him. And the reason they have those rules is because it is darn hard to convert a D&D module, right? You can't necessarily just add or subtract some goblins. It doesn't work that way, especially if there's like a single boss monster. It's not easy to convert that boss monster to something that's somebody way above or below its level, or with way more or less enemies than the intended number. It's very hard to convert that so that it will work. And so, and I see, even like with my own game, even something like we have 4 characters. And one of the players, we've talked about adding somebody because one of the players is hardly ever there, so his character's going to stay as an NPC, but we'd like another player. And so I asked one of my friends, and he never responded on Facebook. I don't think he uses Facebook anymore. So one of the other players asked one of her friends, and this friend is somebody who's hasn't played D&D in a few years, but has played D&D, including 2nd and maybe 3rd and 5th edition. And still looks like she's going to join, right? And the first thought I had was, well, now I got to rebalance all of the battles that I created for the next adventure. Now, I'm not mad about that, right? That's fine. I'd rather have another player. But, there are already 4 level 6 characters. Now there's going to be a 5th level 6 character. I got to rethink everything. There was one battle that I think they're going to get into, which is a battle against an astral dragon, which is actually I was like, ooh, man, is this thing too powerful? I depowered it a little bit, and it's basically like an adult dragon they're going to be fighting. And it's a little strong for their level. Now, it doesn't have a breath weapon because it uses psionics instead, and the psionics are not as powerful as the breath weapon because they're not. Most of the psionics, and I'm using the Strongholds and Followers psionics by Matt Colville. Most of the psionics are they're more single target and they're more subtle in their effects. They'll do things like convince you that reality has changed for until you make your saving throw. Right? So it's sort of like a hold person, which isn't going to kill you outright. And since there are 4 of them plus a panther and now a 5th plus a panther, so 6 enemy characters, holding 1 as a concentration spell, which means you can't do more than 1 at a time, is probably not going to break the party. So it's not as powerful as an equivalent, say, red dragon. Like it's not like an adult red dragon, right? It's powerful, but it's not that powerful. But it's still tough and has a lot of hit points, and its bite and claw attacks do a lot of damage. And there are some of the glowies we're looking for, and it looks like we might have another boss talking over here. Just want to see if it's an elite. No. Look at the white con. Jeez. Alright, well, let's just go right in then, guys. So yeah, even though the party only changed by like 20%, I still might have to go in there and whoops, no, don't attack these guys. I still might have to go in there, and I had debuffed the dragon a little bit. I might have to buff it back up. Just for adding 1 party member, right? Now, City of Heroes, changing the group size from 5 to 6 is not going to break a mission. Right? And it auto scales. It balances for both. And so, and I'm going to be able to balance it for the extra character. It's not a problem, but it's also not like trivially easy, right? You still have to think about it and make changes to things to rebalance it. So balance is hard. Balance is difficult. Knowing the exact level of challenge to put in front of the players, when it's too hard, when it's too easy. And then you have the issue that everybody has a different taste. I've talked about this before, that some of my group mates like to play on +4 times 8, and I don't really like it. I want to have a relaxed and enjoyable mission. I want a challenge, but I don't want to be like, chewing on my fingernails and being, about to die in every single fight. To me, that's just too much. I want to relax while I'm playing this game and enjoy and be able to talk, right? If it were that tight, if it were that tough, I wouldn't be able to narrate because I would be concentrating so much. There would be long stretches of silence because if I don't do that, I'm going to die. And I've played some games like that. I just don't tend to like games that are that tense because, again, I don't need that kind of tension in my life. But that's my preference. Some people live for that. They love it. And so now not only are you balancing, a game for a party or something, but I have 1 set of players to please. These guys had to please tens of thousands of people, all of whom had different thresholds for what's too hard, what's too easy, what's fun, what's not fun, what's too stressful, what's not stressful enough. How many people want the tension, how many people don't want the tension. It's extremely hard to balance when you have all of those factors to weigh when you're thinking about game balance. And I think that overall, they did a really, really good job with the general concept of how they balance the game. I think they just made it a little bit too easy for my taste in the upper levels. And that's what the difficulty slider is there for. It's just, unfortunately, doesn't apply in this case, but most of the time it does. And even for instance, with me saying I think it's too swingy, right? And I personally think it is for my taste. Some people love swingy games where it's easy, 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 and then, oh my god, hard for 10 minutes and then easy again. I don't particularly enjoy that. I prefer a more consistent level of challenge. I don't mind if the challenge ramps up when you're fighting a boss. That's what happens in my dungeons. But it's not... I don't generally make it so that the battles are easy, 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 and then brutally hard. It actually, though, did happen in my last... In the last adventure, it would have been more challenging, but the player characters got all of the bad guys killed by the boss. And I described that before. I feel like we're missing something. Where haven't I been? They got all of the bad guys killed by the boss, and then when they went back, the bad guys were basically just... Did I miss an elevator? The bad guys were basically just shadows and specters, and those things just weren't really powerful enough to deeply challenge the party. And so they did have a fairly easy time until they fought the boss, and then they had a really hard time. Ah, here's the other elevator that I missed. It doesn't really matter. We obviously had to go to every level, but I didn't realize there was an elevator there. Oh, and we can just try it with it. Why would one be right here in the hallway? Why would you put a stasis tube in the hallway like that? That's just really weird. You'd think they would have put the spawn point somewhere else. Alright, so there's two more. There are two more stasis tubes. I guess it's one through each door. I hear one. Any buddies? Nope, no buddies from Cray. So we'll kill that. Boy, those objects die really fast. I wonder how come they didn't make them like the other objects where you have to like beat on them for 10 minutes. Well, not 10 minutes, but you have to beat on them a lot because they have the hit points of an elite boss. Oh, we're being ambushed. Are we? Yep. Let's get him out of the mez. Yeah, so we're being ambushed. That's alright. Let's finish this fight first, and then we'll get the arachnoid. Of course, the arachnoid's coming after me, so he's not going to attack my minions too much. But unfortunately for him, I now have, thanks to the buffs that my minions are laying on me, almost capped resistance. And of course, he was only yellow. So we have, what, one more to go? And for the destroyed ones, sometimes it doesn't show the little asterisk on the map as to where the last one is. But that's okay, we should find it. No problem. There it is. Okay, boys, go kill it. And that is the end of both the mission and the story arc. Let's see if is there an elite boss or somebody to beat up in here? Nope. Alright, so we can head out. So that ends the story arc, and I guess that will end this episode after we finish talking to our buddy. And then we'll wrap up. So we call him, and we get a bunch of experience. We are now almost 4 complete beads into this level already, so we're 40% of the way from 46 to 47 after just a couple of episodes. And he says, "Nice work, Nightmare Lass. Arbiter Deus told me to pass on a big thanks for helping shut down the Cray Arachnoid project. I bet those Cray jerks never knew what hit them." Okay, so we still can do some missions for Deus. We could try Ghost Widow again. I think we should try Ghost Widow again, but we will do that in the next episode. Until then, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been City of Villains on the Rebirth server.